Breathless. The deadly dust of silica. What is silica? The health hazards of silica. How silica affects the body. Silicosis. A deadly lung disease. Who is at risk? OSHA regulations. Preventing exposure to silica dust. Testing for silica exposure. Treatment for silicosis. The importance of education and awareness. The economic impact of silica exposure. Case studies. The human cost of silica exposure. Silica in the news. The future of silica exposure prevention. The role of employers in silica exposure prevention. The role of government in silica exposure prevention. Silica exposure and environmental justice. The importance of advocacy. Silica exposure and the global workplace. The role of health professionals in silica exposure prevention. Silica exposure and the construction industry. Silica exposure and the mining industry. Silica exposure and the manufacturing industry. Silica exposure and the oil and gas industry. Conclusion. The urgency of silica exposure prevention. What is silica? Silica, also known as silicon dioxide, is a naturally occurring mineral that is found in abundance in the Earth's crust. It is commonly used in construction materials such as concrete, bricks, and tiles due to its strength and durability. In addition to construction, silica is also used to manufacture glass, ceramics, and electronics. It can even be found in some food products, such as fruits and vegetables. The health hazards of silica. Exposure to silica dust can have serious health consequences. These tiny particles can cause lung cancer, silicosis, and other respiratory diseases when inhaled. The risks are exceptionally high for those who work in industries such as mining, construction, and manufacturing, where silica dust is commonly produced. It is vital to take precautions to protect yourself from exposure to silica dust. This includes wearing protective equipment such as respirators and ensuring that work areas are well ventilated. Employers are also responsible for providing a safe working environment and educating their workers about the risks associated with silica exposure. How silica affects the body. When silica dust is inhaled, it can enter the lungs and cause damage to the respiratory system. The tiny particles can become lodged in the alveoli or air sacs, leading to inflammation and scarring. Over time, this scarring can make it difficult for the lungs to function properly, leading to conditions like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and lung cancer. In addition to the respiratory system, silica dust can affect other organs, such as the kidneys and immune system. Silicosis. A deadly lung disease. Silicosis is a lung disease caused by inhaling silica dust. The dust particles can become trapped in the lungs and cause inflammation and scarring, leading to difficulty breathing and other serious health problems. In some cases, silicosis can be fatal. It's essential to take precautions to prevent exposure to silica dust and seek medical attention if you experience symptoms like coughing, shortness of breath, or chest pain. Who is at risk of silicosis? Construction, mining, and manufacturing workers are at the highest risk of exposure to silica dust. This includes workers who regularly handle sand, concrete, and rock materials. In addition to workers, those who live near construction sites or other areas where silica is present may also be at risk of exposure. This can include residents of nearby neighborhoods or communities. OSHA regulations for silica. The OSHA regulations regarding silica exposure were updated in 2016 to provide better worker protection. These regulations require employers to limit worker exposure to silica dust by using water or ventilation systems to control dust, providing respiratory protection when necessary, and offering medical exams to monitor workers' health. Employers are also required to keep records of workers' silica exposure and medical exams and to provide training on the hazards of silica exposure and how to prevent it. By following these regulations, employers can help ensure the safety and health of their workers. Preventing exposure to silica dust. To prevent exposure to silica dust, it is vital to take precautions such as wearing protective equipment and using ventilation systems. When working with silica materials, wear a respirator that the National Institute approves for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH. This will help filter out the particles that can cause lung damage. Another way to reduce exposure is to use wet methods when cutting, drilling, or grinding materials that contain silica. This will help keep the dust from becoming airborne and entering your lungs. Additionally, local exhaust ventilation systems can help capture the dust before spreading throughout the work area. Testing for silica exposure. Testing for silica exposure is essential in protecting workers and the public from the harmful effects of this hazardous substance. There are several methods for testing, including air sampling and personal monitoring. Air sampling involves collecting air samples in a work area and analyzing them for silica content. Personal monitoring measures the silica dust a worker is exposed to over time. It is crucial to test for silica exposure because prolonged exposure can lead to serious health problems, including silicosis, lung cancer, and other respiratory diseases. By identifying areas where silica exposure is high and taking steps to reduce it, employers can protect their workers and prevent these illnesses from occurring. Treatment for silicosis. While there is no cure for silicosis, treatment options are available to help manage the symptoms of the disease. The first step in treatment is to remove the individual from further exposure to silica dust. This can be difficult for individuals who work in industries where silica exposure is every day, but it is essential to prevent further lung damage. In addition to removing the source of exposure, doctors may prescribe medications to manage symptoms such as coughing and shortness of breath. Oxygen therapy may also be used to help improve breathing. In severe cases, lung transplantation may be necessary. The importance of education and awareness of silica. Education and awareness are crucial in the fight against silica exposure. Educating workers and the public about the dangers of silica dust can help prevent unnecessary illnesses and deaths. It is essential to teach people how to identify the sources of silica dust and how to take precautions to avoid exposure. In addition to preventing individual cases of silicosis, education and awareness can also help create a safety culture in workplaces and communities. When people understand the risks associated with silica exposure, they are more likely to take action to protect themselves and others. Raising awareness and promoting safety can make a real difference in the fight against silica exposure. The economic impact of silica exposure. Silica exposure not only poses a serious threat to workers' health, but it also has significant economic consequences. The costs associated with lost productivity due to illness and injury and increased healthcare expenses can be staggering. According to a report by OSHA, the estimated annual cost of silicosis in the United States is $2.80 billion. This includes medical expenses, lost wages, and disability payments. In addition, businesses may face legal liability for failing to protect their workers from silica exposure. Case studies. The human cost of silica exposure. John was a construction worker exposed to silica dust for years without proper protection. He was eventually diagnosed with silicosis, a deadly lung disease that would later claim his life. Maria worked in a factory where she was exposed to silica dust daily. She developed chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and struggled to breathe. Her doctor told her that her condition was caused by exposure to silica dust. Silica in the news. In recent news, there has been growing concern about the health risks associated with silica exposure. Many workers in industries such as construction and mining are at risk of inhaling silica dust, which can lead to severe lung diseases such as silicosis. In addition, those who live near construction sites may be exposed to silica dust. Despite these risks, regulations to protect workers from silica exposure have been slow to change. However, there is hope that increased awareness and advocacy will lead to stronger protections for workers and the public. The future of silica exposure prevention. New technologies and strategies are being developed to prevent silica exposure in the workplace. One promising development is advanced protective equipment, such as respirators that filter out even the smallest silica dust particles. Another approach is using ventilation systems that capture and contain silica dust before workers can inhale it. In addition to these technological advancements, there is a growing emphasis on education and training for workers and employers. By increasing awareness of the risks associated with silica exposure and guiding how to prevent it, we can create a safer and healthier workplace for everyone. The role of employers in silica exposure prevention. Employers have a crucial role in preventing silica exposure among their workers. They are responsible for providing a safe work environment and ensuring proper protective equipment is available and used. This includes respiratory protection, such as N95 masks, and engineering controls like ventilation systems. In addition to these measures, employers can also implement regular monitoring and testing for silica exposure levels in the workplace. They should also provide training and education to their workers about the dangers of silica dust and how to prevent exposure. By taking these steps, employers can help protect their workers from the severe health risks of silica exposure. The role of government in silica exposure prevention. Government agencies are crucial in regulating silica exposure and protecting workers and the public. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, sets standards for permissible levels of silica dust in the workplace and requires employers to implement controls to reduce exposure. OSHA also provides training and education to employers and employees on the dangers of silica exposure and how to prevent it. In addition to OSHA, other government agencies, such as the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, conduct research on silica exposure and develop guidelines and recommendations for preventing it. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, also regulates silica emissions from various industries and works to ensure that communities are not exposed to harmful levels of silica dust. Silica exposure and environmental justice. Silica exposure is not just a workplace safety issue but also an environmental justice issue. Low-income communities and communities of color are often disproportionately affected by silica dust due to their proximity to industries that produce it. These communities may also need access to information and resources to protect themselves from silica exposure. It is important to proactively address this issue and ensure all communities have the knowledge and tools to defend themselves. The importance of advocacy. Advocacy is a powerful tool in the fight against silica exposure. By raising awareness about the risks associated with silica dust and pushing for stronger regulations and protections, advocates can help protect workers and the public from this deadly substance. Advocacy can take many forms, from lobbying government officials to organizing protests and rallies. It can also involve educating the public about the dangers of silica exposure and encouraging individuals to take action to protect themselves and their communities. Whatever the approach, advocacy is essential to prevent silica-related illnesses and deaths. Silica exposure and the global workplace. Silica exposure is not just a problem in the United States but a global issue affecting workers worldwide. In developing countries with less stringent safety regulations, workers are at an even greater risk of exposure. For example, in India, workers in the stone crushing industry are exposed to high levels of silica dust, leading to an increased risk of silicosis. Efforts are being made to address silica exposure on a global scale. The World Health Organization, WHO, has recognized the importance of addressing silica exposure and has developed guidelines for protecting workers. International organizations such as the International Labour Organization, ILO, have also launched initiatives to promote safer working conditions and reduce silica exposure. By working together globally, we can progress towards preventing silica-related illnesses and deaths worldwide. The role of health professionals in silica exposure prevention. Health professionals play a critical role in preventing silica exposure. They are responsible for detecting and treating silica-related illnesses and educating their patients about the risks of exposure. Health professionals must be knowledgeable about silica exposure and its effects on the body to provide the best possible care for their patients. In addition to treating patients, health professionals can also help prevent silica exposure by advocating for stronger regulations and protections. They can work with government agencies and other organizations to raise awareness about the dangers of silica dust and push for better workplace safety standards. By actively participating in silica exposure prevention, health professionals can help protect their patients and promote a healthier, safer workplace for all. Silica exposure and the construction industry. Due to the nature of the work involved, the construction industry is one of the most vulnerable to silica exposure. Workers in this industry are often exposed to high levels of silica dust when cutting, drilling, or grinding materials such as concrete and stone. Employers must provide adequate protective equipment such as respirators and implement engineering controls like ventilation systems to protect workers from silica exposure. Training workers on adequately handling and disposing of silica materials is also crucial in preventing exposure. Silica exposure and the mining industry. The mining industry is at the highest risk for silica exposure due to the abundance of silica-containing minerals in the Earth's crust. When these minerals are mined, crushed, or processed, they release dust that workers can inhale. Implementing engineering controls such as ventilation systems and wet drilling techniques is crucial to protecting mining workers from silica exposure. Personal protective equipment, such as respirators, should also be used when necessary. Regular monitoring and testing for silica exposure can help identify potential hazards and prevent long-term health problems. Silica exposure and the manufacturing industry. The manufacturing industry is one of the most significant users of silica, with workers at risk of exposure to materials such as sand, concrete, and glass. Cutting, grinding, or drilling these materials can release dangerous silica dust into the air. To protect workers in the manufacturing industry from silica exposure, employers can implement engineering controls such as ventilation systems and wet methods to reduce dust. Personal protective equipment such as respirators should also be used when necessary. Regular training and education on the dangers of silica exposure can help raise awareness and prevent accidents. Silica exposure and the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry is one of the highest risks for silica exposure. Workers in this industry are often exposed to silica dust during drilling, fracking, and other operations that involve cutting or grinding rock formations. This exposure can lead to serious health problems, including silicosis, lung cancer, and other respiratory illnesses. To protect workers, employers need to provide proper protective equipment and ventilation systems and training on handling silica-containing materials safely. Conclusion. The urgency of silica exposure prevention. In conclusion, silica exposure is a serious issue that can have devastating effects on the health of workers and the public. We have explored the industries that are most at risk, the health hazards associated with silica dust, and the regulations and precautions to prevent exposure. We must take action now to raise awareness about this issue, implement more robust protections for workers, and advocate for change. Doing so can ensure a safer and healthier future for all. Thank you. Thank you for watching Breathless, the Deadly Dust of Silica, brought to you by the Occupational Safety and Environmental Education Training Center. Your journey towards a safer and more compliant workplace doesn't end here. If you found this introduction helpful and want to deepen your understanding of occupational safety, we invite you to take the next step. Join our comprehensive classes, available both in person and online, tailored to empower you with the knowledge and skills you need. Our expert instructors, interactive course materials, and practical insights will guide you through the complexities of workplace safety, ensuring you are always one step ahead in maintaining a safe and healthy work environment. Occupational Safety and Environmental Education, Inc. Whether you prefer the personal touch of our on-site classes or the convenience of our online courses, we are the perfect fit for your schedule and learning style. Occupational Training. Don't wait to make your workplace safer. Visit our website now to enroll and take the first step towards a safer future. Remember, your safety is our priority. Your safety, our mission.